Dave Matthews Band, Fish, Black Keys, Jack White, The National.
James Taylor and Carole King. We actually got to
Mm-hmm.
work on a poster for them for the 50th anniversary of the Troubadour. Everything from working on our friends' garage bands all the way up to, bands that we never thought we would get to see in person, let alone design something for them.
My name is Dan Kuhlken. I'm the lead illustrator of DKNG, also known as the DK of DKNG.
And I'm the NG. I'm Nathan Goldman, and I'm kind of the graphic designer, art director half of the team. DKNG Studios is a design and illustration firm based in Southern California. And it's kind of always just been the two of us working on gig posters, brand identity, packaging, all kinds of design and illustration projects.
Epic. And you guys have been friends for a long time, right?
Yeah, all the way from high school. Actually, was it before high school? We knew of each other before high school, but we became good friends
Yeah,
on the
the
track
first
team.
meeting was on the track team. Dan was a sprinter, I was a pole vaulter, but we found out that we were both musicians as well. So I played drums, Dan played guitar. So our first creative collaboration was playing in a band together. But we soon realized that we were better at designing our album artwork than we were at playing the music. So that's where the collaboration led.
Yeah, it's all about the merch. I mean, you don't even need good music. It's just all about if you have cool hats
Honestly,
and
yeah.
t-shirts and band
We
flyers, right?
totally we started the band to make merch essentially.
And then it rolled back, and then that must be how you guys wanted to specialize in band posters specifically. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean it kind of set the path for it all. I mean, we had like a knack for it. We knew that our combined efforts was kind of more like I draw something and Nathan can actually do the graphic design part of it, which honestly at that point I was like, I don't even know how to do anything on the computer. And the gig poster is kind of the perfect fusion between graphic design and illustration, especially when it comes to like fine art meets typography and font choices and everything. So we kind of knew that we could do it, and then we kind of missed being collaborative with each other because, spoiler alert, the band didn't work out, and so we in our college days started making gig posters together, and that was based off of a an opportunity that arose. Nathan actually knew somebody that worked at the box office at a venue here in LA called the Troubadour, and we overheard that they were looking for a new gig poster artist. They had one that was kind of in-house that was kind of moving on to other opportunities. And so we kind of just put our foot in the door and showed them a couple examples of like shows that are coming up. Like this is what we could do. And they were into it. And then that was kind of like our first client and only client for a long time. We just basically made gig posters together throughout our college years. So what, like over 100 posters for the Troubadour
Wow.
at some point?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. And it was a nice way that we could feel still connected to the music industry, even though we weren't on stage. We were getting to go to a lot of shows and feel like we were part of that
Mhm.
community. So, yeah, it was definitely that passion project that we didn't really realize would lead to a career. We had day jobs on the side even after college, but this was always kind of brewing in the background, wanting to be a part of music and wanting to work together.
That's epic. So you guys were basically able to use your own passion project of your own band with your own concert posters as like a portfolio piece to start
Basically.
making
Yeah.
the work for these larger places like the Troubadour.
Yeah. The longer our career goes on, we just kind of realize all these steps towards the next thing came from the previous thing, and it's all very organic.
Yeah.
And it's never really fully planned out that way, but it made total sense for us at the time. And nowadays it's like if anyone hires us to do something, they reference our gig posters as like a style. Like we like what you did for Dave Matthews Band. Could you do that for us? And it could be, anything beyond just the music industry. It could be a super corporate, it could be packaging design. But yeah, I think gig posters were basically like the inception of everything for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think that even in design for anybody and advice to give to like somebody starting out, it's always to basically create work that you want to receive and usually let your
Hmm.
portfolio kind of roll into your next project. So it sounds like that's exactly what you guys have been doing. And on top
Yeah,
of
totally.
that, it's led to a pretty incredible list of bands and musicians and artists that you guys were able to create artwork for. So will you give like a small snippet of some of the list of clients that you guys have had? I know there's a long
Um,
list.
it's a long list.
Yeah.
Chime in, Nathan, when I run out of ideas here. But okay,
Yeah.
so I mentioned Dave Matthews Band. Fish was kind of a big stepping stone for us because they're a huge like touring band. Black Keys, Jack White, The National, and this is where I blank out. There's probably thousands more, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a few kind of throwback ones are like James Taylor and Carole King. We actually got to
hmm
work on a poster for them for the 50th anniversary of the Troubadour. Eric Clapton, we got to work on some album art for him. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing that, everything from working on our friends' garage bands all the way up to, bands that we never thought we would get to see in person, let alone design something for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been awesome to get to work with so many really talented artists.
It's incredible. It's it must be surreal to be able to see your guys' work connected to artists that maybe you guys listen to or look up to.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of is this symbiotic relationship of working with other types of artists. I think it's also kind of like scratches that itch of used to be, I guess we could still call ourselves always musicians, but I haven't picked up a guitar in like 20 years or whatever. But
Traded in the
it's nice
guitar
to
for a Pentool.
yeah, it's not like
Yeah.
riding the bike, by the way. I completely forgot. But yeah, I think us growing up playing music together and then being able to work with these artists that we really admire that play music, it's just a great fusion of everything. So I think that's where the passion comes from too. We really admire what they do, so we want to do a really good job to
Yeah.
represent what they do.
That's awesome. And when I see your guys' band posters, I feel like they completely stand out from other band posters that I've seen, especially in the conception of these illustrations. It's not so much like uh, you have the band and then you think of the first thing that comes to mind, and then you go ahead and illustrate it like most. I feel like you guys have a really intense conceptual creation process where you're just thinking outside the box, and it has so much deep meaning within these illustrations. When like talk to me a little bit more about the creation process and how when you start building out each of these posters, how you guys think about what to actually illustrate.
Well, just to explain exactly where we got to with our concept development, we had a lot of practice with the Troubadour. I think like Nathan and I experimented with good and bad ideas every single poster because it was like about churning out a poster every week. And I mean, for the band Spoon, we just like put together a bunch of people spooning, and we're like, that's gonna do it. It has nothing to do with the music, but it was kind of like a play on the word. And it was kind of like a way of just knowing what works and what doesn't work. And after 100 posters, you kind of realize like, okay, let's take concept development like really seriously because it is kind of like the reason why these posters can be successful. And they live beyond just kind of like a quick idea. It's something that people are going to be hanging up on their wall and they want to like look at on a regular basis. So yeah, our concept development is something we take really seriously, and I don't think it would be possible to do what we do without each other. We bounce ideas off each other, and we're very different people when it comes to the way we think. And so a lot of the time, it'll just be us both independently thinking about what we want to do, and then kind of, sharing our ideas together and seeing if there's any sort of like Venn diagram there and seeing if there's anything that could be kind of linked together or two ideas that could become one. Or, the beginning of an idea can be polished out more by the other person kind of seeing it. But it really just depends on the project. But like I would say that the main thing that we do is we utilize the fact that it's the two of us to get that to work.
That's
Yeah, and
awesome.
I think that the reason we try to, take it seriously and put a lot of concept into our work is that we think it's an honor that someone would want to like take something we designed and put it on their wall. And like Dan's saying, that you have to look at it every day. So if there's a way that our work can resonate with a fan of the music, we want that all to feel cohesive. So if someone has the album or like the vinyl art on their record player and then our posters on the wall next to it, we want it to all like feel part of the same family and that the art we made was appropriate for what that fan base is going to be looking for. So yeah, we kind of like try to put ourselves in the shoes of the fans of that music and what would they want to see. And I think we also just really like the variety of not getting bored and doing the same style over and over again. So working with a new band is a chance to like try out a new style or a different kind of subject matter or something that makes sense for them. So I think whenever people say they like recognize the DKNG style, we appreciate it, but we also cringe a little bit because we almost want to like disappear and be like, oh, you shouldn't be able to tell that it's us. It should just feel like the band or that singer or whoever and not be a reflection of like us trying to force our personal style onto that band. So, but then on the other hand, we see artists that have super recognizable styles and we're like, oh, should we be more like them so people always recognize us? So I think we try to walk that tightrope of having a few different styles in our toolkit that people will recognize, but we're not going to recycle it over and over again for every single application.
Yeah, I think that speaking of style, like, is a great segment into a new topic where, because I think that when people are looking at you guys' artwork, it's obviously just like there's a pinnacle to like you guys' design work that people can obviously recognize, like that was done by you guys at DKNG Studios. But on top of it, I think that there are some connections between posters or illustrations that you guys have created, whether it be like the use of your grain textures or the gradients, or just even like the detail of like the design work in general, or lack of detail. You guys also do simplistic and modern, elegant design. I'm curious in your build out stage, because I've actually seen you guys' YouTube videos of you guys actually doing the design. And a lot of it starts with the gradients, but then it somehow ends up to like this like incredible, fine detailed, half tone and textured and grained patterns and looks. First, how does your computer not explode? And second,
Good question.
talk to me a little bit more about how that process like is in the background.
We learned, I mean, the hard way when it comes to like our hardware, because we start off with laptops, and at some point you realize you're pushing it too hard, and Adobe Illustrator is crashing, or you can hear the fan like about to explode. And then we realized, like, why are we working with our laptops from college? Like, it's time for us to upgrade, and how much money should we spend on a computer? And like the answer was basically like a good amount, because it's kind of what makes us the money. So we might as well make this investment. So I think we've had our iMac Pros that were like fully decked out for what, 4 years now, and they're still kicking. Actually, probably more than 4 years, but
yeah, I think it's actually been way longer than that because they haven't made the iMac Pro for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just to like go back even further, what our workflow used to be in college was, so I was in LA, Dan was down in Long Beach. Dan would draw stuff by hand on paper. I would drive down there, pick up the paper from him, go to my office at the time because that's the only place I knew of that had a scanner, scan the work into the computer, then go home to my laptop, live trace it, and it was just crazy, but those were the tools that we had at the time. So yeah, now like we're probably getting close to having to replace our computers at some point, which is a little scary, but because when we were looking at like how much should we spend, it's like I could buy a car or an iMac, but I guess we're going with the iMacs. But it's true.
We never
that
leave the house
faster,
anyway, so what the fuck do we need a car for?
yeah, we're just at home working. So yeah, it's like the faster and more efficient we can work, which is like at the heart of a lot of our classes and stuff, the more we can take on. So it kind of makes sense to invest in efficiency where we can. But anyway, I'll let Dan speak more to the texturizing and that workflow of dealing with heavy files.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of ways to go about it, the way we create our work, and it's evolved over time. But one of the reasons why our computers don't explode is because of the order of events. Like we learned the hard way where adding textures too early and having all these like linked images in our files ends up kind of slowing things down. And the more detail you add, the harder it is to work with the poster. And like, we're still trying to finish an illustration and at the same time like waiting for the beach ball to go away for us to like move a node. And like this is not efficient. So what ended up happening was we figured out a way to basically draw everything completely in vector, just using like all the tools that are available in Adobe Illustrator. And then at the very end, after things are separated, then running it through Photoshop. And that's when we do the half toning process. And so that's why you see like on our videos, like this entire construction process. And at the very end, you see the texture. And a lot of people are like, when did you do that? But the answer is it's kind of in the separation and trapping process, which is kind of the non-sexy version of our design process, where it's kind of like a deconstruction of the poster. And we kind of separating colors out layer by layer and making sure that they layer on top of each other that's ready for screen printing. And it would be kind of a boring video to watch, to be honest, because you're kind of watching what's already done, taken apart and layered again. And I think we've done it maybe for like one or two videos, but it just like it adds so much time to the process, and these things are like a super quick time lapse anyway. Might as well just leave it out. Um, but nowadays we're kind of experimenting with the idea of not having to use Photoshop at all and integrating live grain textures. And so that's something we're using with some of our recent gig posters. And that actually, I mean, it slows the computer down a little bit, but not nearly as much as like, a bunch of linked images or trying to like texturize the entire poster at once.
Yeah.
So it's a moving target for sure. And like I think what's happening with our career too is that we're constantly trying to relearn or learn new things on how to do this. Because like Nathan said, we kind of will get bored easily with doing the same thing over and over again. And it's nice to kind of come up with like new methods or new looks along the way that kind of like brings up the level for us. So yeah, I mean, it's it's definitely a situation that's constantly changing. So I don't know if there's a direct answer of like this is how we're always going to do it. That's not true, but there's
Yeah.
definitely a handful of methods that we're used to.
That's cool. Even when I'm looking at you guys' like tutorials or time lapses, it seems like you guys are knowing exactly what you want to do, where you're going to put it, and it's just happening like really obviously quicker than you guys are really doing it. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
real speed. But even in my process, I'm not going from paper. I don't necessarily draw first, and then I go straight to the computer, which is probably a reason for why I'm messing up. Well, let's not call it happy mistakes like Bob Ross.
You're experimenting more because
Experimenting
you're
more,
trying to
right? But you guys
visualize it.
seem right when you're going into the computer, you guys know exactly what you guys are going to create. You guys are putting this here, that there, building this out. You guys will even build out like emblems that most would think would be like enough to stop at there, but then you're
Yeah.
just using it as like a secondary element, like putting it somewhere.
Oh,
Um,
that's all Nathan, where it's like these little hidden gems of like, okay, we gotta get some information in a small area, and we'll throw the file back and forth, and Nathan will make like a badge or something like that, or like a parody of a sign or a logo that exists to just to kind of throw it in. But we're also kind of at the mercy of like um, timelines. And with these gig posters, a lot of times it's like someone will email us and saying, we need a poster tomorrow. And we're like, okay, we can't do it like in one day, but we'll go as quick as we can. And I don't know why the music industry doesn't plan ahead, but we try to get things done as quickly as we can. And what helps with that is just to not run into issues where we're trying to problem solve in the process of illustrating. And so we've learned that like pre-planning our concept as much as possible, getting our sketch as tight as possible, and even getting it to a point where like we're really comfortable with the colors so that we can even plan that out. Like, okay, I'm going to design this and
yeah.
it's going to max out at 3 colors. And there's usually less back and forth, less questioning at that point. You just are building at that point.
Yeah.
It actually makes the design and illustration process more fun too, because it's a huge headache when you're like kind of you're looking at your blank canvas, or you're looking at a problem that you don't know how to solve yet, and you're like, this has become not fun. And
Right.
getting that stuff out of the way is what makes our job enjoyable.
That's for sure. Yeah, I do feel somewhat anxiety ridden throughout like 75% of my process with the unknown until like it starts to get to
Yeah,
the 80% mark where I start seeing it kind of come to life and I'm like, all right, this is good. I can be
yeah.
proud of this now.
That's
Yeah,
when you
we
see
we
the
kind of
exponential curve too. Like it
Yeah,
goes faster at that point.
for sure.
we talk about how a blank artboard is like the scariest thing that we could face.
Mhm.
So yeah, the tighter our sketches could be, the more we feel a little bit more at ease when we get onto the computer of like there is a roadmap ahead that we could follow. That being said, we do make mistakes and we do change course. And in our process videos, I'm realizing like sometimes it does look like it's just all unfolding beautifully because we do have to edit around enough to like usually when I'm editing those process videos, I'm just picking like one song from a band, or if you know it's for a gig poster, so maybe it's 5 minutes on average. And if we have weeks of footage, we have to cut something. So it might actually be more useful to see like, oh, it looks like they went down this whole road and then scrapped that and redid it. And there is some of that in there, but yeah, I guess some of the mistakes are kind of hidden behind the scenes.
Yeah, well,
For sure.
DKNG does not make mistakes, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
that's true.
yeah, that's the
Awesome.
persona we like to lie about. Yeah.
Walk me through how you guys came to the conception of how you guys wanted to create a deck of cards, and then also kind of the initial phases of it.
We made these cards a while back. They've lived a long time because, every year or so we come up with a new colorway, but it all came from a connection with the company Art of Play, which is a card deck producer run by two identical twin magicians, Dan and Dave Buck. Pretty incredible guys. And it's not necessarily like a company that's selling like cards for playing poker. It's kind of more catered to magicians, which is kind of a fun little twist. But they were really into our work and they wanted to collaborate. And this is what they do. They reach out to artists and they say, like, would you like to make a deck of cards? And so it was definitely on our bucket list. And we didn't know exactly the right route in terms of like how to produce it ourselves, but that was kind of the magic of pun intended working with Dan and Dave, that they had those connections. They work with the United States playing card company, and they have a good connection getting cards produced. And so all we had to do is really basically focus on the design, and then they kind of did the rest.
Nice.
Um, One advantage of working with magicians who do cardistry is the term for what they do, like manipulating playing cards, is that they're super particular about what the cards feel like. So the fact that that led to this connection with US Playing Card Company, they produce bicycle playing cards. So these are like the industry standard playing cards with the air cushion finish. One thing I didn't realize was that the cards are printed, they're actually two ply sandwiched together, and the glue they use is black in order to make sure that the cards are completely opaque. So if you're playing a hand of poker across from someone and there's some backlight, there's no way that you're gonna
Mm.
see anything through those cards. So yeah, there's this whole world to it, and it was totally a learning experience for us. And because there's 52 cards plus, promotion cards, and we actually included a little card in case you lose one, you can like make your own updated card to replace it. But it was almost like making a poster series of 52 miniature posters. And like you were talking about, if you do want to make any tweaks or changes, it's like, okay, if I want the spade or the club or something to look a little different, or making sure everything's symmetrical, so the cards read both ways. Now you have to make that change across all the cards. So it was definitely a labor of love to keep tweaking and updating. And we keep joking that we don't make mistakes, but we have actually updated the cards over the years based on the experience of playing with them and watching our friends and family play cards and trying to increase the legibility. And when you have the cards fanned out in your hand, like where are the pips, the little like corner suits placed? So it's this been evolving, ongoing thing of trying to perfect the cards, but also, you know, make them usable, but also make them in our own style. So it's been fun. But now, whenever anyone comes to us and says, "Hey, will you design a deck for us?" We're kind of like, I don't know. Like, if we ever do this again, we're going to do it for ourselves and no one else,
Yeah,
because it is kind of a brutal workload to take on.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
That's awesome. And I think that there is like a connection between a lot of the designs that you guys create where they become tangible products. Whether that is a digital asset that you can use or it is a physical product like a band poster that you can put in your room, playing cards, the postal stamps that you're able to use on mailers. You know, what is it like seeing your guys' work in like real life or in the real space in general?
I mean, it's always really, really cool. I mean, especially when it's a new space too, because we got used to the idea of our gig posters being shown like on walls and, you know, being sold at the shows that they're representing. But to do something like you know, a stamp for the post office and seeing like any, you know, place that you go to where they're selling them, you can see it. I mean, just like walking down the street and going to your post office, like quite literally our work is in there. But then like the world of, I guess the more accessible it is, the more exciting it becomes. Like we did packaging for Cliff Bar and like walking down our grocery store aisle and seeing our work. And then one of the recent projects we did, we worked with Heinz and did their small little like condiment packages and did a little series for them representing every state, United States. And that was like everywhere. And from like a Carl's Jr. to like being in a stadium watching anything. It was basically anywhere that you would find those packages, they pop up, and to the point where it's like so accessible that I'm like walking on the street, and I'm seeing like garbage on the floor. I'm like, hey,
Right.
it's our work.
Yeah, I will say I am slightly embarrassed to admit this, but I have had several moments walking down the street, seeing a Heinz ketchup packet and picking it up to see if it's one of ours, and it has been quite a bit. Actually, the first time I ever saw those in person was at the hospital when my son was being born, and we were like in our hospital room, and they brought room service in, and there was like a little thing of our Heinz packets in it. So yeah, that's been crazy. I feel like more people have reached out because they've seen our Heinz sauce packets than the postage stamps. But I will say that the postage stamps, I think, is what made our career a real thing for my grandma, from like her understanding. Because I think to explain to someone in their 90s, you know, what a graphic designer is in the modern day, and we're like, you know, sending files to people, it's like, okay, I don't like, why don't you get a real job? And at least with something like my grandma can walk into the post office, and she still does this all the time, and like tells all the employees and people there, you know, my grandson worked on these. So that's always cool when there's a lot of parts of our job that are kind of in the ether, like hard to explain to people. And that's one where it's like, here's a postage stamp. You understand what this is, and we made it. So it's like
Yeah.
the most clear cut version of what we do.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think that as a designer in so many circumstances, like you go to a party and you design the invite or you made the
Mhm.
t-shirt for some sort of like group event and like you're just kind of in the corner like, do you think they know that I made it? Like that's
Yeah,
my
Mhm.
yeah,
design. And then I mean at a level like you guys are able to have work that's out into the world in very high visibility areas or products that everybody's going to use so much so that literally you can't escape it. You guys will go into the
yeah, yeah.
hospital or be down the street and you'll be able to see your work, which is an incredible 360 or yeah, full encompassing circle.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's been, I mean, bringing up the playing cards again too, that experiment that we did of creating that large of a quote unquote like series really gave us the confidence to do stuff like Heinz, because it's kind of like the same thing. It's like 50 little
Mhm.
designs. And when they reached out to us, we're like, oh yeah, we've technically done this before. We can do this again. and we've gone faster at doing it. So we should, put our hat in the ring. So we basically, again, kind of had like these opportunities that led to the next, and putting ourselves out there with the playing cards and trying something new, led to, what we know as like these big corporate jobs. So it was a huge like learning curve for us in the beginning, but it really paid off in the end.
And I wanted to just add one thing about the whole like bigger corporate job, because even though we're kind of like, patting ourselves on the back right now for getting to do some cool projects, we are just a two-person team, and that can also work against us because like Heinz is a good example where they were like, we want to work with you, we like what you're proposing, but shouldn't we hire a bigger team to do this because it's a lot of work to take on? And we had to kind of walk them through that and try to make them feel warm and fuzzy about hiring such a small company, to say like, yeah, I guess you could hire a huge team to do this and they'll like farm out the work to a bunch of different freelancers. But the advantage of working with us is that it's just the two of us, like all the quality control is going to pass through us. So there is going to be a quality and attention to detail that you're only going to get from working with a small team. So yeah, we've kind of like tried to use our small size to our advantage in that regard. And it doesn't always work. Like sometimes someone wants so many things in such a short period of time that there's no way we could do it. But in some cases, like Dan's saying, because we've like gotten these reps of working on big series, we know how to approach it. And we can say like, okay, let's give ourselves a template. Here's some rules we're following. Just like we were talking about with putting together sketches, like we know that we can create this path for us to go down to make some of these big projects achievable with just two people.
Yeah. Yeah, even for myself, I'm a one-man band, and I think that there is a uniqueness, especially for the larger businesses that come in, and they may talk to the business owner, and most of the time, what will happen is they'll end up being passed on to one of their junior designers or the middle area of the agency. And what is really special about in both of our situations is that when they go and hop on a Zoom call or even an in-person meeting, the person who's actually going to be doing the work is us. And I think
Totally.
that's a very cool thing and something to be proud of.
Yeah, sometimes people will call us and say like, "Oh, can I talk to your like HR department or like talk to someone here or there?" And it's like, do we like change our voice or pretend to
Right.
put them
Yeah,
on
Which one
hold,
of
or
you
what
phone
are
should we
putting on
down
the
and be
do?
like,
ring?
this is
Yeah.
HR.
So I think like in some cases it might help us that people think we're a bigger company, but we've also realized that like we want to be the face of our business and not hide behind this curtain. So we have been trying to like put ourselves out there more and be more transparent about the fact that it is just the two of us, which maybe there's pros and cons to that, but we try to be as transparent as we can with our work and how we work and all that kind of stuff.
Amazing. If you guys were to give as more of like an end to the conversation, and you guys were able to kind of round up some of the ideas and the learning lessons and everything that we've kind of gathered from this conversation, what would be some like key takeaways that you would provide to either like a beginner designer or somebody who's just kind of like maybe graduated college, has gotten or is looking for their first freelance job, anything in between where you can give them some sort of like tangible piece that they're able to go and take and maybe start their journey or enhance their journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. One of the things that we're constantly trying to reiterate and say to beginner designers, people that are coming right out of college or trying to start their own thing, let's say, let's say they were working with a larger company and want to do more freelance work. One of the major questions we get a lot of times is just like how to get started in a general sense. And a lot of times the best thing to do is just to get started in some way, because a lot of times people kind of will overthink what the first step's going to be. And it ends up being like a big waiting period of just like, it's got to be perfect, my first step. And the truth is, it's never going to be perfect. You basically just need to move forward. And that forward momentum of like choosing what you're passionate about and what you enjoy doing, you can't go wrong. I mean, at the worst case scenario, you're going to make something that you enjoyed making. and maybe you don't get hired again for it, but you enjoyed the process. But the likelihood is that you will get hired to do it again, because there's a difference between putting work out there that you're not proud of and you feel your whole portfolio with it versus making a portfolio of just only things that you enjoy making. And that's kind of what we learned in our career, is what got us to the point where we are now, is filling our entire portfolio with like one kind of work, which was gig posters. And to be honest, like I went to Long Beach State and I applied for um, a BA and graphic design. I like tried to get into the program. And one of the things that didn't get me into the program, like I didn't actually get my degree in graphic design, was that my portfolio wasn't diverse enough. It was like basically all gig posters. And it was also collaboration. Like a lot of the work that we were doing was it was me and Nathan. So like it didn't really count as a way to kind of move forward in college. And a teacher really kind of helped me through the thinking process of this. It was like, why are you trying to get a degree? I'm like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, well, it looks like you're already doing what you want to do. And are you getting paid to do this? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, keep doing it. And so that was kind of like that big aha moment of like, oh, I'm kind of paving my own path and it's working. And why do I need to kind of stick to these, you know, these roles that we kind of put in front of us as like, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. And so I would say, like, in a nutshell, just kind of keep making work that you really like doing and be really passionate about what it is. And it doesn't matter how niche, what's the word, niche it is, or how like specific it is. Actually, if anything, like the more specific it is, the more likely someone's going to hire you to do that because you've got a specialty. So I think it's more about focusing on what you enjoy. And the more you enjoy it, the more you work on it, the better you're going to get at it. It's just like this huge snowball effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that you guys started without even knowing that you started, because your first
Yeah.
path was
Mhm.
that you wanted to be in a band and you guys were just going to make the merch and the poster just because that's what you wanted to do. But then, let alone knew that the real path, or the path that you guys have taken, is the one that started just by doing that. And so it really is like a put one foot in front of the other. You never know how
For sure.
result's going to take you.
Yeah, we had no idea we were on the path until now that we've been able to look back on it. And I think one of the hard things is when someone says, like, if I want to build my own studio like yours, what do I do? It's, I wish we were in a field like medicine or something where I could just say, well, the
Yeah,
first
here's the
step is to go
steps.
to medical school, and like then you do your residency and then you find your specialty. And in any type of creative profession, whether you're trying to become an actor or a designer or whatever, it's just so unclear how you do that. So yeah, I think to piggyback on what Dan was saying, my advice was going to be super similar, of just like, don't be afraid to be a specialist. And I think especially we see with like designers coming out of college that they feel like they need to have one of everything represented in their portfolio. And like, here's my packaging design, here's my business card design, here's my web design. But if you love web design and you hate packaging, or vice versa, then focus on what you love. And yeah, people will recognize the good work versus trying to be everything to everyone. So even though it's scary to kind of put yourself out there and be like, well, I can't take websites off my portfolio. What if that's how I'm going to make my money? It's like you do kind of have to have a little bit of blind faith and think, if I'm really passionate about packaging and I'm going to put all my energy into that, people will recognize good work and people will discover you.
Perfectly said. Yeah, I think that's a great way to wrap this up.
We're actually new to the digital download space, but we just released a digital download that is a single Illustrator file, and it's basically what's inside it is a way to add texture to your work within Illustrator that's completely adjustable, editable, and it doesn't require any linked imagery. It's just using the built-in raster effects inside Illustrator, and it has a total like very clean, non-aliased look. It's kind of like that perfect little sandy vibe that you're trying to add to like your work that kind of brings it past that whole like clean vector look. So we've had it available for a couple weeks now, and it's been pretty successful. I think a lot of people are getting the hang of using it. And it's $8. It's a cheap thing to buy that can improve your work, hopefully. And you can find that at dkngstudios.com.
And then on the event front, we will be at Creative Works West on April 25th through 27th. We're going to be doing an enamel pin workshop there, and we'll be at their marketplace. So if you're in Seattle, come say hi.
Dan and Nathan, thank you so much for joining us and for being a pal.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being